I'm very excited for this conversation. I'm on with the founder and CEO of RealRev, Vin Tirri, who's joining us from Atlanta, Georgia, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Awesome.
Happy to be
Awesome.
here.
Yeah, we're so happy to have this conversation. As I said, I've been really looking forward to it. I'd love to just hop right in. Could you tell us just a little bit about kind of your story, your background, and then maybe a little bit about the formation and founding of RealRev?
Of course. Happy to do it. And again, happy to be here. My undergrad or educational background was grounded in accounting. So I got my undergrad and master's in accounting. And unlike most of my classmates, I went straight into investment banking. I did a handful of years of investment banking and got an incredible opportunity to join a group in North Carolina. And that was sort of my first stint as a CFO, where I really grinded my teeth, actually learned how to be a CFO, I would say. You don't really know, I'd say, your first job as a financial leader, or switching from, call it, professional to being, boots on the ground, actually helping run an organization. You actually have no idea like what it takes, what it is to help an organization grow and scale. And in 2017, I joined what was at the time Georgia Pain and Wellness. It's now gone through a brand change and goes by Summit Spine and Joint. And from 2017 to 2022, I worked with this. It was a multi-site MSO focused on interventional pain. And what I was, tasked with as the CFO was building out, call it the corporate professional team infrastructure, reporting processes. And the biggest struggle I had in guiding my team, closing every month, call it, and instituting process was the alignment of performance metrics, clarity on net revenue, and visibility into AR. There's commonality that I see that we had, that our clients have, that the problem, I would say, is rooted in. A lot of it has to do with data being, disparate across multiple sources, reporting taking way too long, weeks or even a month to close the month, which is rough. And that's call it a function of manual processes that exists in Excel, and we do backflips here to do a front flip here. Inconsistent, error prone,
Yeah.
delayed processes, basically. And that basically is exactly what it is that RealRev solves.
Yeah, and before we hop into RealRev, I really want to make sure everyone understands kind of the problem. So, how would you describe it to someone who doesn't have an accounting background? What makes the revenue recognition and knowing what your revenue is any given month so difficult?
It's a great question. What makes it so difficult is the how large the data sets are,
Hmm.
how frequent, let's say, attributes of your patient base or attributes of the services that you're providing are constantly changing. Responsibilities in terms of what it is that they owe, contracts changing, your visit type and provider mix, or visit type mix shift happening. Being able to wrangle all that and move swiftly through a close process that ultimately supports metrics that are helpful and help guide decisions, ultimately drive the growth of the practice. It's extremely difficult and isn't possible, I would say, with the technology that exists for multi-site healthcare.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with the difficulty. I mean, we lived it at DxTx before, thankfully stumbling upon you in kind of some of your early days at RealRev. But I can definitely attest to with us being across about a dozen states, dozens of surgery centers, dozens of locations, managing all those contracts and mapping that all back to a net revenue number at the end of each month. It was like pulling teeth. So we definitely could not do what we're doing without what you've built.
We're extremely proud of all of our, all the clients we have. But it's taking the willingness of some of the early believers like yourself to bet on RealRev, and it's our pleasure to delight our clients.
Yeah, I mean, it's really been a huge differentiator for us, and I'd love if you could again to a non-accounting audience to try to keep it simple for people like me. How would you describe what RealRev is doing today in helping the super complicated process?
So, not to get too construction term, I'd call it on you, right? I think of us as the conduit, let's say, between the EMR or EMRs, so you could have multiple EMRs, many practices do, and the general ledger, or what many folks call the ERP. So RealRev sits really in between those two systems, standardizing the financial and operational data, which is prevalent. It's not just patient data that's in the EMRs that you need. We standardize and classify and enrich all of that data into one consistent schema and provide a platform whereby, put simply, let's say, every metric that the office of the CFO needs is pre-computed and fully traceable down to an individual claim or transaction level.
I can't say enough when we do our monthly brand reviews. So we go through every single practice in our portfolio, look to see what's going well, what's not going well. Yeah. I always have our 30 to 40 page brand review up, and I have RealRev open because that's what allows us to drill into to see those insights. So I mean, it's been a total game changer for us.
And without that, right, it's like without having that visibility, you're left asking yourself, hey, well, can you run that report later? Or like, can you get me that later? Or like many practices, you're settling with just good enough, and your close process actually doesn't support or create any flywheels that dovetail into any other processes. It just becomes something that you do for the sake of having to get it done, but it doesn't. A lot of times it's not accurate, and it sits sort of like a silent monster, let's say, that will eventually rear its head if and when mistakes are made, which can happen as the practice grows and inevitably changes.
When do you typically see folks coming to you? Like when is it time to call RealRev?
It's a great question. Many times there's a triggering moment, let's call it, where they run into an issue where they've miscalculated AR, miscalculated net revenue. They know they're wrong. They're not necessarily sure what period it was related to or why, or maybe the specifics as to how it happened. Nearly every time it starts with a problem that's rooted in the front end, we call it, or the back end, where it's a data problem, a raw data problem. It's more often than not that no one, not that that folks don't know how to do the accounting for it. It's just more the difficulty that comes with the wrangling of the data. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how frequent the data changes. So like, not to go be too long-winded, but if you think about it for DxTx, and no one on your team or none of our clients here because it's part of what it is that we provide. None of them hear about when the API changes, right? And there's a data issue technically. Think of a report being fed to you, accurately for 20 months, and on that 21st month, something on their end changed. And typically, if you're going through a close process, right, you'll miss it, and you'll end up figuring out that you're wrong, or that the front of the process or the start of the process was wrong, the data was wrong, all the way at the end, right? It's someone like yourself that's reviewing the financials, or it's the CFO that finally has that summarized picture. But they've likely done all the work, maybe even already booked all the entries, to come to find out, oh, the report isn't calculating balances correctly, or oh, it didn't bring in the Atlanta ASC location, or this new provider is not incorporated. Why? We capture all of those nuances and ensure the accuracy of the data on the front end. It's part of our core process for all of our clients. They don't have to worry about that.
I know that you've built a lot of technological infrastructure to support the super rapid turnaround and delivering these really accurate results. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of how you've used technology to solve this problem that I'm sure is pervasive across the healthcare industry?
Are you saying specific, but more specific to the flow and the technology that supports the flow of the data?
Well, I'd say I think that the kind of traditional way of doing things is often, in Excel and, trying to pull together a bunch of different charge masters and then understanding, geographic modifiers and groupers and, all of that is super complex, especially when you then, extrapolate it across a multi-state or multi-TIN
Totally.
platform. So I'd love to just, again, get a little bit of understanding behind, under the hood. What are
Yeah.
you doing under there and how have you used technology to achieve that?
We break down our what we call our ingestion process. We break it down into four, I call it steps. The first of those steps is the data ingestion and validation. What the tech world I guess would call it would be the ETL processes. So what the ETL stands for is extraction, transformation, and loading. Our platform is truly hands off. So we're directly integrating with the source EMR systems. And before anything moves forward through the next step, which is standardization and enrichment, now we coined that as RevIQ, which I'll hit on in a sec. The platform validates and ensures the integrity of the data before anything else happens. So we're never getting to the end and,
Mhm.
and like, oh no, we got to start over. Does that make sense as sort of step one?
Step one, definitely, yeah.
So the next step is where I would say a lot of the magic sort of starts to happen. We refer to it as RevIQ. RevIQ is our automation and AI engine. So what RevIQ does is takes this data, all of that data is cleansed, classified, and enriched, whereby every claim and transactions attributes are determined or classified in an automated fashion. We're not handing you what would feel like your typical SaaS solution where maybe you're sold or promised the world, right? But all you're really handed is, let's say, some tables that you're having to go in there and manually book this entry. Oh, this entry is a TFESI, or this entry is Blue Cross. Any new location, any existing location during onboarding seamlessly works its way through that pipeline, the standardization and enrichment pipeline, and the entire schema is enriched in an automated fashion. And that there's a reason for that. One, so that everything speaks the same data language, but it also sets us up for success downstream, and then also dovetails straight into the next process, which is let's take these enriched attributes about the claim. There's over 3 dozen of them, and let's leverage that to tell us what it is that we should use to estimate that's going to happen.
Mm.
We leverage that to tell for the rev rec estimation. So step three, and feel free to
No, no,
ask
no, this is great.
questions. So step three, and you can envision this all in workflows. So each workflow has its own DAGs. They're basically tasks that are all automated, and they're all stood up extremely quickly, but bespoke to every client
Mhm.
and system. But after we get through step one, which is, data ingestion validation, step two, standardization and enrichment, now it's time to take that enriched data and apply rev rec estimation. How we do that is there's a slew of different ways. It's highly configurable. I'd say 95% of our clients rely on the default method. Nearly all of our clients use this. It's the RealRev portfolio approach. It's a gap-based framework that dynamically groups claims into highly homogeneous portfolios and leverages each group's trended performance to support estimation assumptions.
Mhm.
So think a real rev portfolio is defined by a unique combination of more than 36 different attributes that we're handling, that the platform's handling. No one's having to go in there and tinker with anything. Everything gets classified and enriched as it should, based on rule-based logic. We're looking to over 36 attributes, most notably, let's say, the claim age, the entity, the location group, some may call the place of service, the service line, the visit type, and its combined adjudication status determine whether a claim is estimated and what assumptions apply.
I remember I was explaining this to a couple of our advisors. A lot of groups are still on cash basis, right? And so like
Of course.
that's probably the most common thing that we see in our industry. And
Right.
then you kind of get the next level of sophistication, which actually sometimes is worse, is applying a GCR, a gross collection rate to this large charge number. But then you miss mix shift, you miss the payer mix, you miss site of service, you miss different contracts. So then
Totally.
so then you start to see people being, okay, well, how about GCR by maybe by payer? So then
Right.
maybe your Medicare is at X and your Blue Cross are at Y, but again you're still missing so much of that nuance. And so basically what you guys have done is you continue to differentiate that into all those attributes, I guess up until a point, right? You still have this portfolio approach, but you're getting more and more granular into what you're estimating.
So, and we call it in the accounting world, honestly, the literature, the AICPA literature
Yeah.
actually speaks to the homogenization of portfolios for healthcare services.
Hmm.
Um, but what they also speak to that I feel like is glanced over in the accounting world way too much is the management of the homogenization. So, like you called out, a very common mistake, I would say, or spot where practices make a mistake is using way too broad, one size fits all assumptions for revenue recognition purposes.
Hmm.
Um, and on the face of the financials, for a little while, it might look okay, but it,
But then you start to see that drift, cash to accrual, or you start to see a gap and you don't know why. Yeah.
exactly. And most of those practices can't tell you what amount of the revenue that we're looking on the face of the financials today is related to pluses or minuses in the past.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and
Uh,
I think that's one of the things that's been awesome for us to see within the RealRev platform is you're very, you show us what the net revenue is for the period, and then you show us what is that prior period adjustment. Where have things changed relative to historical, and the amount of head scratching that has avoided for us is, that could be a service on its own. So really
what,
appreciative of that.
that was an important feature that we wanted to make sure that we offered because I didn't have that at Summit. I was
Yeah,
always curious and I would get the question. And like many CFOs, you get good at skating around things and you can rationalize things. The reality is you have like half the truth,
yeah, you
but
don't know.
you
You
don't
don't
know.
know. Yeah,
Right.
it's hard to say I don't know, and sometimes I mean, especially in a healthcare setting where precision is so important on the clinical side as it should be. You need
100%.
that you need to have that same level of precision across the organization to have a coherent culture. So it's yeah, you've solved a huge problem, at least for us. So really appreciative.
I mean, we didn't hit on it, but there are times, right? Like especially as you're growing, where we call it a cold start, or from a statistical standpoint, you can think of it as like the N or the claim volume
Hmm.
being very low. Within RealRev, what we do in those instances where we can't rely on the portfolio group to help drive and root the assumptions,
Hmm.
we route those claims estimations in to a contract or an allowable schedule. So most of them
Hmm.
are defaulting to a Medicare fee schedule
Yeah.
that we keep updated. Many times practices, maybe they're trying something new, right? And they're like, hey, can you use this Blue Cross contract to drive estimations for
Sure.
XYZ? We've built the capabilities to keep the estimation more configurable, but my recommendation is never to root your estimations into something static that isn't representative of what's actually happening in the past, especially if you don't have the ability to quantify if what you're saying or estimating is going to happen actually happens in that
Yeah.
KPI.
And I think so far in the conversation is definitely geared more toward like office of CFO.
Totally.
If I'm a board member of a healthcare company, why should I care about this? If I'm a physician, why should I care? If I'm a lender, why should I care? Can you talk to some of those other stakeholders and why this is important?
We'll go physicians and then investors, let's say
Sure.
next. So physicians, what RealRev does, and the approach that RealRev takes, let's say, provides visibility into their own performance. But how many times, I'm sure, like prior to RealRev, did they lack visibility into what this provider's underlying, procedures or volume actually, related to in terms of net revenue, or how much AR is Dr. Smith making up, let's say.
Hmm.
Um, but so I mean, on the physician end, they get visibility into their own performance, and it's not really just in terms of charges and collections, but with the context that we're able to provide in the platform, they get visibility into bottlenecks, denials that are impacting, let's say, patient care or practice profitability. And they can see the service lines and procedures that they're performing and make improvements that maybe need to be made. Maybe this procedure, right? This new procedure that I'm doing isn't reimbursing, or a lot of times providers want to be able to see, well, they want to see it, right? Then
Yeah.
they're incredibly brilliant people. There's no pulling the wool over the eyes of a provider. They're very detailed usually. And if you don't have the detail, you lose credibility.
Yeah.
I guess I say that point to dovetail straight to the investor and lender scope, right? Having everything centralized and call it audit ready builds confidence, which is, I mean, you know this, how important that is to validating and warranting the valuation, how critical it is for valuation due diligence and ongoing, monitoring. It's
100% agree. I can think of fewer things that are more painful in a boardroom setting or with a lender than a big revenue restatement, because those are usually not in the direction that anyone wants to see them.
sadly enough how common it's actually more common for a practice not to have a revenue misstatement. You don't hear about it too much, but even public organizations that we speak with drive blind regularly.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of times it's rooted in not having the right technology that can handle the mass amount of data that it would take to, let's say, do things correctly so that it provides the level of visibility that we do.
Yeah, and one thing that we see a lot of is when again we go through our monthly portfolio reviews with the physician owners, and sometimes they'll take a vacation, and you'll see right away the net revenue number goes down. If we were just
Mhm.
looking at collections, you would miss a lot of that nuance, and so they don't necessarily see that impact right away to their bank account, but it's there, and they kind of know that there's going to be a dip in the future. So it helps us connect actual activity to financial performance without that lag that cash has.
And a lot of practices that are on a cash basis, right? They look at things solely, right, on what is cash basis, which is when it hits your bank account. They might not have the ability to look at performance when it's earned. They call it an accrual basis. You lose so much visibility into earned profitability versus profitability of the collections. With the accrual basis, you get visibility into cash flow that's to come,
Hmm.
um, and earn performance.
Yeah, no, again, it's been a game changer for us. As a math guy myself, I mean, to me, I love the level of detail, and kind of the way that you set up your modeling is super fascinating. At a certain point, I feel like there's going to be enough industry adoption of this level of detail that basically it'll be ubiquitous. What do you think are the obstacles, or do you see a tipping point where if someone doesn't have real rev and then that type of level of detail, they just can't really be taken seriously?
I think that RealRev should be, call it, the viewed as best in class or the default, right? We have the ability to hyper accurately estimate revenue rather than broad stroke, let's say cash flow velocity style waterfall approach to just getting the the Q of R, the quality of earnings done. We have the ability to support revenue estimates at a claim level. The reason why this was, why take broad stroke estimates? Why does the AICPA give this one-off nuance where this industry, healthcare, can leverage portfolio groups to estimate revenue? And the reason that is because they know is because it was and is borderline impossible to wrangle as many different data points and claims as you need to. And at RealRev, not, call it a finance tech CFO creating a SaaS solution, that was humbling in the beginning, right? Learning that you're actually going to have to build something that hasn't been done yet, one, but that can handle a mass amount of data, can illustrate it in a very understandable and digestible form, and then quickly show folks the ultimate support that builds to whatever metric they're looking at. Was a lot more difficult, I'd say, than I thought it would be, but it was so much fun. It's incredible. We meet new challenges regularly, but the things we've learned really on the backs of all of our clients, it's been awesome to provide, I'd say. It's
Yeah, it's an interesting journey. I feel like you kind of have to be confident enough to know that macro you're right, but humble enough to know that some of your short-term assumptions are wrong and you need to pivot. And it's kind of that balance between the two, which is so fascinating.
I imagine that rhymes with the entrepreneurial journey of many folks, including yourself. I mean, it's not easy to create any business, but if you're passionate and in love with the problem that you're solving, you're gonna figure it out.
Yeah. I feel like you can't have a technology conversation, at least in 2025, without talking about AI at least.
Of
Uh,
course.
and I know when we were chatting earlier, I was a little nervous that you guys might get caught up in the AI wave because I really like that you have a very deterministic model behind
Hmm.
how revenue is calculated. I don't want a hallucination there. But of course, there is a role for AI in all aspects of the economy and especially in tech. How are you guys thinking about rolling out various AI tools and functionality?
Out of the gate, we were always driving our estimates based on rule-based logic. And I'd say as of recent, we've incorporated AI via RevIQ into enhancing, let's say, our pipeline to identifying and helping us classify qualitative attributes about a claim. Nothing obviously quantitative. I feel like any AI's answers, whether they matter or they don't, if they're incorporated in a process, this might be just a me thing, but it needs to have a component where a human can go in and identify or see what the answer is, and if possible, understand the why. For us, let's say a new specialty comes to RealRev and we don't have anything to look back to tell us that this code combination is a surgery that is a you name it. AI has been helpful in helping us, establish a foundation, but everything from there is reviewed by a human and it ends up being incorporated into rule-based logic that's specific to the client. I'd say equally important is every number and estimate in RealRev is grounded in a deterministic, like you're calling it, auditable algorithm, ensuring that it's accurate, it's hyper transparent, and we provide that full confidence right, in every financial output.
That's great to hear on both ends that it's definitely, you're using the tools and as you should, but it's also not kind of not a crutch and not something that is a shaky foundation from which to build the financial reporting.
You can't go to the board or go to your auditor and be like, hey, well, why is this what it is? And be like, well, ChatGPT told me.
Yeah. The neural net is hard to audit. That makes sense.
Okay.
What is next? What's on the horizon for RealRev? I know you guys are growing super rapidly and adding new features. I'm sure adding new clients. What's up next?
There's a ton going on, and we're always building, building, I would say, through listening to our clients and what it is that they need, and thus the market wants. But we're continuing to expand Rev IQ intelligence layer by building think of it as a conversational interface that's directly in RealRev, designed to know only that client's data and validated values. We see the trend for SaaS solutions in general, and we do think that it would be awesome to offer, let's say, a living, breathing analyst on demand, essentially,
Mm,
that can summarize performance in a office of the CFO like-minded view. Think MD&A narratives, building hyper custom reports and visuals. Clients will be able to receive precise contextual, call it answers,
yeah,
like immediately. And I guess on the product front, what we've been putting some shape on, and this one's a bit more near term that we're going to introduce formally to the market, is what we're calling the QORE on RealRev. It's the same platform, and though this exists today and will be again introduced formally to the market later this year, it's the platform as it is today, but offered in a transaction-focused ad hoc model.
mm,
It's built for sellers, advisors, buyers in healthcare M&A, that translates the revenue complexity that comes with deals into deal-ready clarity before the deal, or before the deal actually happens, maybe during it. And then, as we were thinking about this product, how difficult is the working capital true up in the booking and tracking of that post deal? Offering a solution that can sit side by side with clients or with bankers in a ad hoc, or hey, I want to do an ingestion when I want, versus our clients today are all on monthly subscriptions, and we aid them, the month end close process with an on a cadence ingestion. With the QORE on RealRev, it's a model that we feel like doesn't exist,
yeah.
because you're left alone post deal.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I could definitely see us using that and benefiting and just providing transparency to everyone on kind of how the mechanism works, how the math flows, and why certain things are the way they are post close.
For us, it naturally dovetails, and it's been interesting. Our clients, especially the ones that are acquisitive, regularly use RealRev already today,
Yeah,
in lieu of your traditional, quality of earnings or quality of revenue. What it is that we're able to provide in the platform, in in a consistent fashion with the underlying business, and the ability to quickly or rapidly consolidate, isolate, and find many pros and cons that through a traditional Q of R, not that they're purposely hiding, but they just don't bubble up to the surface what it
yeah.
is that's driving, or that's important to know on the revenue and performance side about a practice.
Congrats to you for that new product. Like I said, I think that's going to be a huge hit, and I know we would be definitely beneficiaries of that.
We're excited about it.
Any kind of final thoughts? Anything that we didn't talk about that you think is important for folks to know about you or RealRev or anything like that?
I'd say whether you choose, to use RealRev or another platform, it's important to look for a solution that truly understands healthcare. If you're looking at another revenue intelligence platform that is also used for another industry, it likely will either fall short or will be costly to customize. You need a single source of truth that can bring in and can meet all the edge cases and difficulty that does come with healthcare and truly automate it so that your team's not left continuing to do what it is that they're likely dreading and doing today. I'd say another factor that's worth getting another solution to provide or justify is the ROI, ensuring that it's proven and supported down to a claim or transaction level, and you're not just relying on words, hot air, or promises. They're actually able to provide you support for what we do is delineate between what is a financial ROI and an operational ROI in time saved. But the financial ROI, being able to justify and point to the dollars that the platform has aided the recovery of or has helped highlight is incredibly important. And it's those standards I'd say that providers should demand. At the end of the day, I'd say you're not really buying software. You're trying to buy confidence to make better decisions for your patients, for your team, and ultimately for your future.
Vinny, I appreciate the time and looking forward to seeing you soon.
I appreciate it, Owen. Thank you.